I think there's a false mindset about communication being how fluent you are or how eloquent you are. Is your grammar accurate? Well, these are important things, but I think communication is actually the response that you get. That's what it boils down to. It's not about the language at all. I remember a long time ago, we helped a school get a 100% pass percentage in Bombay. After 70 years, for the first time, they managed to crack that. And we went there, and there were a bunch of 100 students from underprivileged background. The principal had said these are the most unruly. So I went and I gave a talk for about 45 minutes. And at the end of it, some of the children were in tears. And I had a set of 10 volunteers. And I told the students to go find the EIS, the volunteers, and get a one-on-one work done. So each person worked with like 10 people. And we worked on them for 2 days, back to back. And that's it. After that, it's not just them who got 100% pass percentage. It's not just them who passed in all the subjects, but it had an impact on the entire school. Of course, we worked with the teachers too, so that we wanted to spread it up like a yeast, it ripples. Now, after that intervention, I was sleeping in my room in Lalit. You have this consulting space. We have the hall. And the team was outside doing something. And I'm lying down. The door was open to the bed. And I was lying down and sleeping. And suddenly I hear a voice playing from outside, which sounds like my words. But it's like broken English and some weird accent. And I'm like, who is this? So I come outside and I see Hari is playing and watching the video of what happened in the school. And I'm surprised because I look at myself and that's not me. That is not my language. And I was at that time speaking broken English. And to top it all, I said, Hari, can you play it from the beginning? And we played the video from the beginning. And I noticed that as I was coming on to the front of the stage to speak to some of the students, I was so, I even fumbled. I almost fell down the stage. And then I thought, well, what was I doing? So I played it back to the beginning and I put it at half speed. And then I played the video, and then I played it at 2x speed and played the video, and certain patterns became obvious. So when we played it the next time, we realized that as I was walking from where I was to the front of the class, there were groups of students. There was one group here, one group there, one group there, one group there, and they were all in different rhythms. And part of my body was matching the rhythm of one group, and another part of my body was matching the rhythm of another group. And I'll see if I can show you the video. The exact moment where I almost stumbled and fell, there were actually 3 children stumbling and falling from a chair. So it was like as if at that moment I was pacing all the 100 students in that room. And when I came and spoke, I think from the first half a minute, I had their full undivided attention. And they knew that there's something important that is coming now into their life. And yes, then I started with a story and another story and another story. And at the end of 45 minutes, they were almost in tears. But the point over here is that if you don't have access to the response of the students, and if you just saw Antonio speaking on a YouTube, you might think, why is this guy speaking in such broken English? And if somebody told you Antonio is a very powerful communicator, then maybe some of you will think, oh, broken English is power. That is not any more ridiculous than thinking fluency and eloquency is great communication. So communication is not about how you sound in isolation. It's not about how the words flow. And I think communication, especially if you're giving speech or if you're talking one-on-one to person, is you may not know English well, you may not know the right word to say at the right time, but those things don't matter as much as what emotion you evoke in that person. Could you make them feel convinced? Could you make them feel trust? Could you make them feel at ease? And sometimes, can you provoke that person? And then it becomes more like a martial art, more like a dance, where it's not about your language, it's about your senses. What do you see and what do you hear and how do you respond to that? And most of this is unconscious, right? You don't. If you have to, by the way, this doesn't mean when you're talking to somebody you process 100 things in your head. It means you prepare yourself to process. And when you're having a conversation with someone, it's just natural and it's just easy and it's in the moment. So I remember when John decided that he was going to help me help Funny Kumar. There was that moment where he says, okay, I'm going to mentor you. And I'm like, yes, the founder of Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And I'm like, he's going to send me the secret of the secrets that nobody knows until now. And I am going to learn something that has never been revealed. And I'm waiting. And I think the next day I get the first mail from him, lesson 1. And I'm like, wow. And I'm just about to go and I'm so excited. I open the mail and it says, calibration is the mother of all skills. And I'm like, what? I know that. But you see, I do everything that when I decide to learn from someone, I just do everything they ask me to do. So when John asked me to commit hours and hours together doing calibration exercises, I did it. So the first calibration exercise that John gave me was go sit in the beach and have someone next to me and watch people walk and hear the sound of their footstep and see how the sound is different when it's a male walking and how the sound is different when it's a female walking. So in the beginning, it was very easy because the footwear is different. Then he made it difficult. He said, how does the sound of a female and a man walking when they're both wearing sports shoes? And so you watch them walk for a while, and then you close your eyes, you hear them walk, and you guess, male, female. In the beginning, I got it like 50%, which means random luck. And then slowly, as Harini kept saying, correct, false, slowly the percentage started improving. And then as it got better, John said, now John asked me to send a description of what I hear, right? So I have to tell him, so in a sound that is about 2 seconds, there is a higher, like I would describe 2 seconds of a sound with like a paragraph, because you see, language is a secondary description. It's not a primary representation. What I mean by that is your brain experiences things as you live. The memory, the storage unit in your memory is the exact as the senses that you use to capture the environment. So you see things, you hear things, you feel things, you smell things, you taste things. Your brain stores all of these experiences in the same format. What you see is stored as an image. The smell is stored as a smell. The sound is stored as a sound. Now, those are what I call as primary descriptions. They're rich. But then, if you have to describe what happened in a meeting, in a place to someone, you're not using these 5 senses to describe. You're using a description of those 5 senses. And you use language. Now, what happens in the process is there's a process of deletion and distortion, just like what happens with a microphone, for example. A keyboard can never sound as rich as a piano does because, your natural voice is what I call an analog range, is that it has billions of bits of data. Now, when they get converted to 0 and 1 and they go to the microphone and they come out, not all of them are captured. There is a process of deletion. There is as much as possible captured, and there's some quality that is lost. It's never going to be the same as the original. It's like you go on a vacation and you just felt paradise, and you send your friends the photos, and they're like, yeah, I've been to hilly places like this. So So there's a difference between an actual experience and then a representation of that experience. Most of learning happens when your input is directly from the reality, the five senses, and then you summarize it using language. Why do we speak our mother tongue so easily? Because we didn't learn the summary first. We learned the nuances of it by seeing, by hearing, and experiencing language. On the other hand, when you use language to learn language, it's the only way you never learn language. I got 90 plus in my Hindi in school. Yeah, if I had just moved to Bombay for a year, I would have picked it up much faster. So anyway, so I would send these descriptions to John, and John would be like, okay, now look at people who hear the sound and say how tall or how heavy they are. So this kept going on for a while, and I kept doing it. And then I started getting better at it. And then, see, the thing about these calibration exercises is that it's linear, it's unidimensional, right? It's like, okay, there's a particular type of a sound, particular type of physic or shoe it is. But then the next set of exercises were a little more complex. Is I had to go to a coffee shop, and I think John, because of his background from CIA, he was the captain for CIA. Before he developed neuro-linguistic programming, a part of his survival relied on noticing and understanding people. So one of the exercises he designed for me is go to a coffee shop and being very stealthily take a book and read the book and act as if you're reading the book. But in your peripheral vision, be completely aware of the table next to you. And I had to keep a chart, and I had to put person 1, person 2, person 3, person 4. Person 1 is leaning forward at an angle of about 30 degrees. Person B is leaning backward and relaxed. Person C is tapping the feet. Person 4 is breathing unusually slower than all the other persons sitting over there. And then I had to start meticulously writing, okay, now when person A smiles, person C seems to have an involuntary response of raising the eyebrow. So I would keep doing that and then send the reports to John, and John would say, what got person A to smile in the first place? And so after a while, this thing got really, really, really intense. And there was a point when when I went to meet Funny Kumar, when he was paralyzed, all I did was for 6 months, I sent him stories. Because I had this deep fear in me to go meet him. Back then, I thought it was fear. It was a feeling of don't go. And when I went to John, when we went Brighton together, he said, Antonio, so what are 10 ways in which you think you might be able to attempt helping Funny Kumar? And there were 10 things that I came up with. And John said, go do it. I said, no, but I have this fear. And he said, when was the last time you had that fear? And I went back in my mind and I thought, when I felt I was not ready for something. Then he said, instead of calling it fear, could you think of it as something different? And then at that day, I started recognizing that as a barometer for my readiness, of my skills and capabilities. So the more I did the calibration exercises, the more I felt like that, that level of intensity reducing. And in fact, I went and met Funny Kumar only when I felt absolutely comfortable. And until then, I was telling him stories of plasticity. Plasticity is just the ability of the brain to do the functioning of the neighboring regions. Sometimes if you have like a part of your neurology, not like if a nerve is not functioning, your neurology has the ability where the neighboring nerves can do their function as well as the function of the neighbor. So I sent him a lot of stories of plasticity and miracles, and then when I went to meet him, it was a very strange experience, a very interesting experience, because I go all the way. They've been waiting for me for 6 months, and I go there, and his neurologist was there, his physiotherapist was there, his family members were there, his mother, father was there, and he was there, of course. And I go inside, and they ask, so what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. Have you done this before? I said, no. So what do you want to do now? And I said, what I want to do is I want to just sit here and watch as he does everything that he does all the time. And Funny Kumar went and, they were doing his regular stuff and they were watching TV. And I noticed this minor movement in his toes, very minor. And at first I thought it was a spasm because, when people are paralyzed, there's this random movements that happen and they're not necessarily controlled movements. So, but then I kept noticing and I noticed that the spasms had a different rhythm and speed than these movements. And I felt like these movements were very fine controlled movements. So once I saw that, I validated it again. They were fine differences, but the calibration skills made a big difference. Like for me, this and this were different movements. So then I said, okay, now it's time. I think I have an idea. Let's go. So I took Funny into the room. I closed the door. I said, Funny, what I want you to do is go to sleep. So he lied down. He went to sleep. And I told his unconscious, I think, you see, you don't have sensations in your leg, but I think you were trying to do something that actually brought back some movements in the toes. But the challenge is you don't know when the toes moved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand right here and I want you to go back and do what you did. And as he went back and did what he did, after like about half an hour, when the toes moved, I said, this is it. Whatever you did, now do it again. The toes moved again. I said, do it again. Toes moved again. Do it again. Toes moved again. We kept at that for like 3-4 hours. And then I asked him to wake up, and then he was able to look at the left toes and say, and think of moving the left toes would move, and then think of the right toes, and the right toes would move. And then the physiotherapist took over. They made from a passive treatment, they made it into an active treatment. The point I want to make to you is that everybody was there, including him, and the toes are moving in plain sight for everyone to see. But what wasn't there is a calibration to notice that they were moving differently from the spasm. In fact, I remember one of the times it was inside the room, and I wanted to self-equip himself, so I got him some procedures where he could go into deep altar state, get some movements, and get the movement. And once he did that, and he woke up his eyes, and I saw his feet ankle move slightly like this, very, very slower than this. In fact, it was something like that. And then I said, congratulations. He looked at his feet and said, they're not moving. I said, they're moving, and they're not moving, and they're moving, and not moving. I said, they're moving, not moving. Then I turned off the lights, and then I took my mobile, I flashed a light, and so that it made a shadow against the wall. And then he looked at the wall and he said, moving. The interesting thing is when his mother came in, she said, what are you both looking at? He said, Mom, don't you see my feet is moving? She's like, no. So, ever since, what I found out is that if you could pay attention to such nuances, not only could you help someone like that figure out an opportunity that's right there, but they didn't know was there, but you could also, in your day-to-day communication with people, recognize intentions, know who is actually speaking the heart. Some people come and ask me questions like, Antonio, since you know NLP, can you tell me when people are lying, when their eyes go up left or eyes go right up? And it's an indication to me that they have very poor NLP knowledge. It doesn't work that way. I think the thing is, some things are complex, and human communication is complex. If I have to design a way to launch a rocket from Earth to Moon, then I need to have a system that can represent the complexity of that launch. Now, if I say, no, I like algebra because it's simple, and I have to express in algebra all the thermodynamics of this rocket, it's not going to be possible. I need a mathematical representation that adequately represents the complexity of that launch. And human communication is like that. I read books on body language that say, if someone is sitting like this, they're close to new ideas. I don't know how close to new ideas the author was when he wrote that. Um, because, see, what is the difference between calibration and observation? What is the difference? See, I think both assumption and calibration come from precise observation. Because you see someone sitting like that, that's an observation. You're trying to make eye contact, but that guy is going like this, not looking at you. That's precise observation. Now, after the observation, if you make a judgment without a prior reference, it's assumption. If you make a judgment with the possibility in your head that it could be right or it could be wrong, it's a guess. If you make a judgment or a conclusion, is the right word, not judgment. If you make a conclusion with a prior reference and validation, then it's calibration. So you have assumption, you have guess, and then you have calibration. They all come from observation. So observation in itself, and I hate it when I travel abroad, and then there are NLP trainers and specifically communication people who say, I don't know why people use complex words like calibration. I like to simplify things. Observation is the key to everything. Is when you understand. See, the problem is, Einstein once said, don't make anything simpler. You got to make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler. Can you believe someone simplified that and said, Einstein once said, everything must be made simple. So the point I'm making is that human communication is complex. You cannot fit it into specific rules. And even when you profile people on their mood types and stuff like that, if you do the profiling a day after their far relative died, you're going to get a different result than if you did the profiling when their child got a prize in school. Or if the boss had a bad experience the previous day, it's going to be a different result. I think Anthony Robbins' team, I'm not sure if it's Anthony Robbins' team or someone else, they did this simple experiment where they had a description about a person, a paragraph of description about a person, and it was very vague. And they sent volunteers out to give that description to be read, and there were some questions about the person. What do you think is the personality type of this person? Da 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 da. Now, what it did is before the people who were involved in the experiment were given that description, they gave them the volunteer. So if you're the volunteer and you're asking someone to fill that form, the volunteer had a cup of liquid in their hand, coffee, tea, something, and before the person who's filling the form was filling it, they gave the cup to the other person to hold it, saying, hey, can you hold this for a minute? Let me just write your name and give it to you. So the volunteer, the participant, was holding the cup for like about 30 seconds. Now, what they found out is if the cup was hot, when they filled the description about the person they read in that para, they had words like he was a warm person or a blah, blah, blah. And if the cup was cold, the descriptions had something like he was a cold and, words and adjectives that are related to cold. It's an example of how an insignificant event, like what cup you are holding at that time, can influence what you fill in an assessment form. And what about when you're profiling people on critical things, like if you on are they extrovert or introvert or they da 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 da, and what if there are significant life events going on? And the other thing is also, I personally think people have multiple personalities, and I hope they do. I don't know if you met coaches and trainers who sound like coaches and trainers all the time. They have this. So once I met this guy, and he's like, so how do you think about that now? And I thought he does that only when he's talking to his clients. And I was so shocked when we were in a dinner party, he was having the same tone, same voice with his wife.
I have a friend who does that.
You have a friend who does that?
She's a teacher.
Yeah, yeah.
She's always like that.
Yeah. Now, this happens. You become an executive in an office. Sometimes you carry that personality back home. Now, I really think that successful people have multiple personalities, and I think we thrive on our ability to bring in a different vibe and a different personality at different situations. So I think some of the personality tests are as oversimplified as body language books. And when things have to be complex, they have to be complex. So when I did these things that John asked me to do, what I figured out is that instead of reading rules and principles of profiling people, of body language, what if you can become a generative learning machine of human psychology, whereby every interaction and every communication, you're discovering new categories, new personalities, new types. Isn't that much more powerful? So imagine if someone speaks in a loud voice or speaks in a high pitch. For one person, it means he's lying. For another person, means he's convinced. For another person, means he's confused. For another person, means he's in love. And imagine for each of the individual you interact with, you have a personalized body language book for that person. That's calibration. So it's not about this, it's about this for this individual is different. And the only way you can create a map of that sort is if you have the senses to notice and validate an ongoing communication moment by moment without letting it interfere with what you're doing at that moment. So it requires two things. It requires a high performance state because you don't want your observations to interfere with what you're doing. In fact, you want it to enhance. And second, it requires a high sense of calibration skills, specifically sensory acuity, for you to see, hear, and feel things differently.